Why did I start an engineering career? I've spoken about this so many different times across social media, across events, but I think the best way to explain this and the right way to explain it is to probably share more about me and my career. Now, I try my best not to make engineering career about me, but understanding Josh and Josh's career will give you a different perspective or a more in-depth perspective as to why I started engineering career. So to start off with, I'm a chartered mechanical engineer. Welcome to the Engineer Career Podcast. This is a first and something I'm really excited about. This is the first solo podcast that I've produced since starting engineering career, and it's a bit daunting, but it's also really fun because, like I tell each of my guests that come on the podcast, this is, I guess, my opportunity to reflect on engineering career so far in a more in-depth format, and also to share some of my insights from the podcast, from what I've seen within industry at the moment, both good and bad, and also to answer a couple of your questions, which, I mean, I get them every week, but trying to note them down and actually give a good response back to them, it seems like a solo podcast would be the best place to do that. So you may have noticed over the past, what has been 9 weeks now, that there's a podcast that comes out every single week, and that's changed from what I'd intended to do in the first place. So when I started the engineering career, the plan was there was what I thought would be two intense periods throughout the year where students, industry, those aspiring to be engineers, parents, mentors, and those who are just interested in engineering would be focused on engineering careers. And that would be September, October, because generally you've got schools are going back, you've got universities and colleges going back, you've got graduate roles going live. And then in March you have roughly around the same time period as a national apprenticeship week, and a lot of apprenticeship roles going live. So the two intense periods where I had intended to release 8 episodes back to back, and then in between doing some specials with some industry, interesting voices from industry. But what I very quickly realised is that worked, and but it put a lot of pressure on recording during those times, and also it then left this period where podcasts weren't going out, and then after the second batch, so in March, it then left a period of almost from April through to September where there would be no podcasts or sporadic podcasts, which in the modern world, dropping out content, dropping out podcasts or reflections, it doesn't work. So I decided to go every week, and you could argue that it's maybe even more of a burden, but bizarrely it doesn't feel like more of a burden releasing the podcast every week now. It just seems like it's part of the drumbeat of engineering career, recording podcasts weekly, sometimes twice a week. It really has changed my outlook on producing the podcast. So with the education system and with the way the industry does its outreach for jobs, the podcast's out every week, and I decided that every 10th episode I would release a solo podcast. It's quite a common thing across podcasts, but it allows me to really dig deep into what's current at the moment, and also what my guests have been sharing, so that we can reflect on them. So this is it. This is number 1, and over the next, what will be podcast episode, I was going to say hour, but who knows how long this will take. I'm going to be discussing 3 main areas, not directly but indirectly. But this gives me the chance now, this individual episode, this solo, it gives me the chance to reflect on the key themes throughout the podcast, to share industry insights, thoughts and views, and then finally an opportunity to connect with you, the growing engineering career community. And it is growing, and it's probably not where I thought it was going to be. There's a lot more depth to it than I thought I would get to, and I guess that's testament to where we are within industry at the moment, where those in industry want to connect to the next generation of engineers, and the next generation of engineers want to connect with industry. And I'm proud that Engineer Career is playing a pivotal part in that connection piece. So across the podcast, we've covered mechanical, electrical, biomedical, chemical, product design, civil, geotechnical. We've covered people, projects, innovation, organisations, and leaders within industry. So I guess it's now my turn to get stuck into this. So here's the 4 areas we're going to cover in this episode. I think the best way to structure this is as follows: why I started the engineer career, what we've done so far, why industry needs to adapt to avoid the almost inevitable skills cliff edge, and then the mailbox to answer a few of your questions. And I'm so excited, so let's go for it. So why did I start an engineer career? I've spoken about this so many different times across social media, across events, but I think the best way to explain this, and the right way to explain it, is to probably share more about me and my career. Now, I try my best not to make engineer career about me, but understanding Josh and Josh's career will give you a different perspective, or a more in-depth perspective, as to why I started engineer career. So to start off with, I'm a chartered mechanical engineer. I studied at Glasgow Caledonian University, and I graduated in 2015. So you've heard me before, this is 10 years this year that I've been out in industry. I studied from 2010 to 2015. So that's a 5-year course doing computer-aided mechanical engineering. So it was an integrated master's. And during my time at university, I was fortunate to complete what was unofficially known at the time for my course, but officially known across industry, but isn't used as much now. Essentially a sandwich course. So I completed first year, second year, and halfway through third year, so after semester 1, I went into industry and completed a 9-month placement. And I did that at a company called Doosan Babcock, who have since been taken over by Altrad Babcock. So I spent 9 months there. Initially it was supposed to be 12 weeks to cover the semester, so I did distance learning and I also did work in industry, but it then got extended to doing a total of 9 months, essentially all the way up to me returning to university for my 4th year. And in that 9 months, I benefited from so much, from mentorship, from exposure to real engineering projects, exposure to what engineering actually is. And I don't mean just the technical side, I mean the management side, I mean the engineering part of an organisation, how it contributes to profitability, how engineering is fundamental to our economy, and how businesses struggle to get work, which then has a knock-on impact onto recruitment, etc. I saw all that in the first 9 months. I also experienced or saw people getting made redundant during that time, which was a fascinating and challenging place to be at times. So during, I then returned to university and then completed my 4th year, where you do your dissertation, which I did using a project that I had initiated through my placement. Completed that with, again, support and mentorship from the organisation. You can probably see what's coming here, my link to industry, and my biased view towards getting young people into industry as early as possible. I then returned to Doosan Babcock for a 5-month summer internship, and that was over from May to, again, September. And this time round, it was in a different department. So as opposed to the first time round, I was doing projects related to nuclear power stations, small scale manufacture, small scale testing associated with components within manufacture within the nuclear industry. This time, although it was still within nuclear, I joined a department called the non-destructive testing department, and I was again given exposure to amazing people, amazing engineers, amazing projects, and learn different aspects of, I guess, engineering that maybe I didn't know, from dye penetrant testing to the different radiography. I learned quite complex about the development of quite complex non-destructive testing techniques and tools, because Doosan Babcock specialised in that. It still specialised with it. And I then came to the end of that and then went back and did my master's. So that's essentially my background. And I then joined Doosan Babcock as a full-time employee as a project engineer. I then moved to Babcock International, and then I've kind of done a bit of bouncing since then. But in my early career, I was exposed to small-scale manufacturing, mechanical testing. I worked with technicians, fitters, welders, test engineers. I benefited from the experience of others and those who wanted to share their knowledge with it with me and with younger engineers without without saying I want to do it. It was just the way it happened, and that is what I built my perspective of what engineering career is now from that unconscious giving of knowledge to the younger generation. And it happens within industry now, and people benefit from it. But I think we have the ability to go bigger and better. And I think industry needs to be the leading light on that, so that everyone that picks engineering, whether that's at college or university, sees what I saw and feels what I saw in terms of the support and the need for my skills and my capabilities. So since I've left university and I've worked in industry, I've always stayed in touch with university. I've done quite a bit of work with Glasgow Caledonian University. I've returned and done guest lectures. I've tutored maths, and I've generally been a support for engineering students in an unofficial role and aspiring engineers. And that kind of takes me on to the second part of why I started engineering career, which was when I was at Babcock International, which is a different organisation to Altrad and Doosan. And I worked at HM Naval Base Clyde, which is a naval base, and there I got an amazing opportunity. I almost fell into it to build my own engineering team due to a need case that was required by the client at the time. And over a 2-year period, I went from a problem, the company I worked for having a problem that they had to solve, and I didn't necessarily solve it in its entirety, but I would say that I was a contributing factor to the way that they attacked the solution, and that was building a capability through an engineering team. And during that time, I recruited engineers. I wrote job specs for, the actual. I wrote the business case, got it signed off, got the funding. Wrote the business operating procedures for the department. Like I said, I recruited. I had graduates coming through the team. Did a bit of mentoring and line management, and I was in my element as such. If I'm being really honest, the actual work itself was tough, and the environment was tough, but in a good way. It was challenging, but I loved just working with other people in a team and helping them see what they could be to an extent. And then I left Babcock International and joined SSE Transmission, where I work now full time, and joined sustainability related projects within an amazing environment. So across my career, I've seen the possibilities of what it can be to be an engineer. So going back to why I started engineering career, it's because I've seen the gaps across industry, which I have a view that talent within our academic systems has a place to solve and to fill. And if you read anything about skills gaps in the UK, and this is coming from the perspective of someone that's 33, so someone that's maybe not been around forever, and it's a question I ask a lot, which is, has the phrase skills gaps been around for a long time? And the answer is generally yes. So you could take from that maybe there isn't a solution to it, but I'm a solution-based goal-getter, goal driver, and when I know how anxious young people are about their futures, and I know how engineering as a career, as an industry, can transform your possibilities in your own personal situations, through my own and through others that I've seen, I think it's my responsibility to do what I can to help younger people and others into a career. And that's why I started the engineering career. So that's a long way around to say why I started the engineering career. And I guess the engineering career model of what I've created, which is a multifaceted engagement, multifaceted attraction and engagement platform, which has podcasts, events, social media, a talent network, etc., is a vehicle to help those who are studying or trying to enter our industry to see what they can be. So that's the starting point for why I started the engineer career. And I guess I didn't answer the question directly there, but hopefully through you hearing my story, you can get an appreciation for where I see the next generation's role and how they can fill the gaps. How we do that is a wider discussion, which I have discussions about with organisations a lot, and I'm excited to share more around how that translates into industry. So what have we achieved so far? So this is the 30th, or we've had 30. This is number 30. In terms of the podcast episodes, we've had 2 series, 2 trailers, 8 episodes in each series. We've had a number of different organisations being involved with those, from ACOM sponsoring series 2 to TACA doing their own podcast special. We've recorded with a number of different areas of engineering, different sectors and different professions within it, in terms of the different layers of management, directors and early career professionals. We've had 10 events, 6 live podcasts. So 6 live podcasts. We've had 3 summer session events which took place in summer of 2025, and we've had our first flagship Power of Engineering event in Glasgow, which took place on the 6th of November. We now have 3 strategic partners on board who are supporting our work. So that's ACOM, the University of Strathclyde and the Energy Institute. We've got our Student Ambassador Network, which runs across Scotland, which is a total of 15 students across each of the universities in Scotland where engineering is taught. And that Student Ambassador Network is almost fundamental in the part of the foundation of engineer career. It allows engineer career to be connected to the next generation of engineers through a 2-way channel. The student ambassadors can funnel their views and challenges and concerns and questions up through the engineer career communication chain, and through and out through our platform. But also engineer career can go back through that network and work with the students to solve some of the challenges and understand where today's student is. And a lot of people ask me the question around how have students changed since I was at university, or since Josh, you were at university. And there's been a lot's happened since 2015, and I won't go into the details of it, but we can throw one out there, like COVID, and that has changed the landscape, or adapted maybe behaviours. But deep down, the more I work with students and the more I engage with them at events and speak with students, I don't think students have changed. I think the principles of going to university to better themselves, to learn, to essentially be seen, to get a job, to engage, it's all still there. Are the anxieties still there that I had at university? Absolutely. Is the nervousness of not getting a job still there? Absolutely. But is the talent there? 100%. Is the capability? Yes. Is the confidence level? Yes. So I'm not a believer that young people today are any different to what young people were 10 years ago. In fact, I think they're even more capable now. And I explain this a lot, and talk to students and organisations a lot about this. And then finally, we've got the Talent Network, which went live in July and has had a soft release, you could argue. We've not went and pushed it too firm, and it's still maturing. But ultimately, the Talent Network is a network for the engineering student community. So far, we've got over 150 students on that. It is a community built on a bespoke platform which allows students to connect with engineer career and connect with the engineer career network and our strategic partners. We have question and answer calls with students can ask questions of engineers. Engineers can come on and talk about their career and have a bit more of a human connection with the next generation. We've got a series just about to go live on the Talent Network, which is a masterclass series, which is a bespokely produced and released bank of short form videos which answers and provides informative support for engineering students, ranging from how to utilize LinkedIn to how to get an internship, or how best to navigate the challenge of getting an internship, how to build your profile, how to overcome imposter syndrome at networking events. All this good stuff is in there now, and how to explore different careers within engineering, how to become chartered, are all covered in the masterclass bank, and there's going to be more coming and just built up over time. But you can only access that if you're a student and if you're in our network, in the talent network, and it's completely free to join, which is something I take a lot of pride on, because the way that Engineer Career is set up as an organisation is that our outreach is free for students, as close as we can. Okay, there may be some tickets for some events that may be sitting at £2, but that's more just to make sure that we get people coming along to it who want to come. But a lot of our content, all of our content is free, and so is our student events. So I guess going into the main crux of one of the main topics, which is very relevant right now, and it generally wasn't the reason why I started Engineer Career, but it's certainly something that Engineer Career has stepped into being a voice towards. But also, I believe that what we've built Engineer Career to be is a key product and solution to the skills gap that we foresee in the UK. The skills gap is an interesting topic, and I see this through multiple lenses, so I think I'm very well placed to give a perspective on this. That's not to say that I'm right, or should I say that Engineer Career is right. As I've explained already, I've been a student, I've been a graduate, I've been an aspiring engineer, I've been a developing engineer, I become an engineer, I become a chartered engineer, I become a team lead, an engineering manager, I've managed a team, I've recruited, I've mentored, I've line managed, and I've managed projects. Now, by no means am I saying that's like I'm some sort of saint. That's just what I've done in my career so far. And how you measure how good I am at that is for other people to measure. But I've seen the skills gap locally within organisations and holistically as someone that looks at it through the lens of someone that has been in each one of those positions. And that's where the angle I come at it from. But one of the most interesting angles to come at the skills gap from is as someone that manages projects. Now, if you have a project and you don't have the resource to deliver something, you can look at it from two ways. You can look at it from, we can't deliver that because we don't have this, therefore there's delays, etc. Or you can look at it from that angle as well, but also, what can we do to solve that problem along the line? And that is the angle I come at the skills gap from. Or, as you may have read or heard me say before, the system gap. The reason I say the system gap is because there is engineering universities that teach engineering, there's colleges that teach engineering, there is schools that promote engineering, and there is STEM initiatives, that STEM being science, technology, engineering, maths, that entice young people into engineering. So we've got that mix, we've got that cocktail there. But yet what I see is a bottleneck at the point at which all of that good work, all of the work that's happened in schools, enticing people into engineering, all of the work done in colleges, teaching people and upskilling people, all of the work that's done at universities, which is, again, the upskilling and the learning, all of that good hard work is done. And then at the end of it, we have complex systems which pick and choose where people and how people get into industry. Yet at the same time, we talk about there being a skills gap. That doesn't add up to me. And I've got a few stats here that I want to read out to you to give some context behind this. The UK needs 124,000, so roughly 124,000 new engineers per year to meet demand. But there's an annual shortfall of somewhere between 40 and 60,000. 44,000 graduates leave university every year, which means 44,000 engineering graduates are looking for jobs. So that's another stat. The one that I find really interesting is that we have somewhere between 100 and 180,000 engineers in engineering and technology related degrees, so studying throughout the UK. Yet not all of them, a very low percentage of them, get internships and work placements or any exposure to industry. What we need to do in the UK at the moment is we need to look at ways at which we can bring talent into the industry earlier and give them that taste for it. Because what that does is it allows us to show the future of our industry what they're going to become. Now, I talk a lot in the podcast and I listen to engineering leaders, engineers who come on the podcast talk about the benefits that they had from doing an internship. There has been a few cases where the guests have came on and said, I didn't do an internship. And they talk about how it hasn't held them back, and I'm all for that, and I love that balance, and I love that because the chances of you getting an internship are quite small. So therefore, hearing someone like Morgan Stewart who works at Babcock International, or someone like Stuart Thomas who talks about his fellow students or his friends at university who didn't get placements are now in more senior roles than he has. I'm so glad that both Stuart and Morgan have shared that, because what it does is it helps students take a bit of comfort that if they don't get an internship, that it's not going to hold them back. But I'm looking at it from the angle of closing the skills gap. We need to, as an industry, utilise the talent that we've got, because we can plug the gaps in the jobs and the tasks which are monotonous, which are, we all do it in the workplace, which aren't, maybe they're not. They're small, kind of abstract jobs that students are more than capable of doing. I've done summer placements. The jobs that I did, some were technical, complex, and really tough. But some of the jobs I did were simple, and they're the type of jobs that we can utilise talent students for. But more widely, we can also build plans and build placements and build schemes which upskill students every summer, so then we can then utilise them quicker. I'm a firm believer that the work placement internship model that we've got is great, and the graduate schemes we've got in the UK are great, but we can't have only internships, work placements and graduate schemes when we've got such a looming problem on the horizon where up to 20% of the workforce is going to be retiring in the next 5 years. We have to look at new systems to integrate the talent that we've got. It might be that we trim down. Some organisations might even look at adapting their graduate scheme and building in the work placement internship model into a longer period traineeship, which enables talent that comes on board, that ticks the right boxes in terms of capability and growth and shows the right skill sets early on, that the organisation offers more opportunities in third year, fourth year, and the upskilling, so that when they graduate, they can come into industry and hit the ground running. There's opportunities that we have in industry to utilise the talent that we've got earlier, and engineering careers place to do that. So that's the rant over, and that's the main part of what this solo was about. It was about trying to convey how engineering career feels towards the younger people and the aspiring engineers, and how we can utilise them better. So, going on to the mailbox, we've got a few interesting questions to cover off before we finish off the first solo. And the first one is, how can students utilise LinkedIn? This question comes up all the time. And it's something that I feel I can't answer, in one, and that's why I've done a masterclass of it, and students will get the full masterclass on that. But in short, this is my 3-point plan for if you've got LinkedIn, you're a student. If I go onto your page and I don't know, and I can't tell what you're studying, where you want to go, what you're interested in, then what do you think a recruiter or an organisation or someone that is looking to recruit someone of that you're like yourself or where you want to go, how do you think they're going to feel? So if I go onto your page on LinkedIn and I can't tell what you're studying, where you want to go, that's the first thing. So get your profile reflecting who you are and what your aspirations are. It's the exact same as your CV. Number 2, connect with the people in industry who interest you and where you want to work. So if it's Formula 1, do a bit of outreach. There's so many awesome engineers within Formula 1 or within the energy space. Reach out to people who interest you. So follow them, read their posts, and drop them a message. So that's number 1 is get the profile ready. Number 2 is follow those who are in the industries you want to work in and drop them a message. And number 3, make sure your feed, and this is for all social media platforms, make sure your feed reflects where you want to go. So if you're following the right companies and the right people, and you're contributing to the right to the organizations and the people that you want to work with, your feed should reflect that. It's kind of how the algorithm works. So if you saw my feed at the moment on LinkedIn is all about careers, it's all about universities, it's all about graduate scheme jobs, it's all about early career engagement. There's a bit about the kind of politics behind skills and workforce planning, and there's obviously a lot about with the institutes in the UK. That's all there, and it generally my feed is what I scroll through and connect with the people and discussions which that satisfy what I'm trying to drive with engineering career. Number 2, common themes across the podcast. Love this question. I could go on forever about this, but the 3 that stand out to me are as follows, and I'll give a bit of background behind each one. Number 1, resilience. Number 2, nothing is fixed. And number 3, everyone entered industry, or everyone's route into industry was their own. So resilience is fundamental, and I think every single guest has demonstrated a bit of resilience. Now, I wish I could go through each episode and tell you, but some that stand out to me, that my favourite one, as I think you all know, is Stuart Thomas's. He left university in the May and didn't get his job into the November. Stuart's a good friend of mine, and I remember having a lot of conversations with him at the time around looking at jobs and etc. And Stuart was resilient, and I think resilience is so important if you're a student because of exactly the problem that I was talking about, which is the way that industry wants to essentially recruit talent, which leaves a lot of students feeling that they are not getting picked for assessment centres, etc., or feeling that assessment centres are maybe not as human as they should be. Resilience is fundamental when you're building your career, especially in early careers. Rejection is going to come. I'll tell you a story about rejection, and I've not shared this before. This is the first time in the podcast. When I graduated, I applied. Well, before I graduated, in my final year, I applied to join the graduate scheme at Doosan Babcock. I had spent a combined 13 months there, and I get rejected from the graduate scheme at Doosan Babcock. I needed resilience, because I thought, if I can't get a job with Doosan Babcock after spending 9 months there, how am I going to get a job? Now, subsequently, I managed to get a direct entry job and didn't join the graduate scheme, but trust me, I needed resilience for that. My second example of resilience is from series 2, and it was with Kirsty Carlisle, who's just got her PhD. She's just successfully defended her Viva, so congratulations to Kirsty. Kirsty's resilience, I absolutely love this story, and I'll hopefully get it right, but in terms of clarity. But listen to Kirsty's episode back. Amazing person. And Kirsty joined me at the University of Glasgow a few weeks ago for a live podcast. Kirsty wanted to get into medicine. She went to university, and she didn't get into medicine. She then, I think, she done another course. She dropped out of that after 1 year, and then she went into to study biomedical engineering. And when you hear Kirsty's story about why she wanted to go into medicine, and it was because of her family and her connection to her grandparents, and going full circle to going into biomedical engineering, and now doing a PhD in prosthetics, and almost working on what she, the reason she wanted to do medicine in the first place. The full circle of it was one of my favourite stories, and the resilience of kind of nipping away, not getting into medicine. I can't remember the course that she actually studied, but initially, and then dropped out of that, and then going back into university to study biomedical engineering. I absolutely loved that. So yeah, Kirsty and Stuart's, but resilience is fundamental and a common theme across the podcast. Everyone's shown resilience in their own way, and I think it's fundamental that students have resilience, especially nowadays. Second one is nothing is fixed. I think that's something that's really important to hear if you're a student, and I think everyone in the podcast has demonstrated this. So whether it's a pivot, whether it's going into industry, thinking it's going to be a certain way, studying mechanical engineering and wanting to join a certain sector, and then now being in a different sector, a different part of industry, nothing is fixed in engineering. And nothing is fixed in your career. So what you think you're going to be doing might not likely turn out that way. But also problems that arise, whether it's struggling to get a job, nothing's fixed, and it's your determination that pushes you through in that. And then the final theme is everyone had their own way of entering industry. And I absolutely love that. And that's what makes the podcast just my favourite thing to do. Hearing engineers talk about how they got into industry, how they got the first job. Whether it's Ella Podmore writing a letter to McLaren, or whether it's Stuart, as I mentioned, whether it's someone like Callum Gaw, who found his way into engineering through an opportunity through Power & Futures, whether it's Doa, who loves hydrogen now and studying at the University of Edinburgh and coming to Scotland and finding it and just knowing she wanted to be in Scotland, to across season 2, whether it's Scott Haldane, who just absolutely loves wind turbines and sustainability and the drive towards a more sustainable future. I love hearing people's stories, and entering industry is a theme that will always be common, and one that I think is the podcast is built around it, because I want engineering students to hear that there's not one way to get into industry, and I love that part of it. So thanks for the person that asked about that question. The next one is I'd love an internship, but it's so hard to get one. Any advice? So there's no silver bullet, and it's not advice. I guess it's my perspective and engineer careers kind of perspective of it. Utilize your network. That's why LinkedIn is so powerful, but also building a network through going to events, being part of the IMechE or whoever your professional institute is. Building a network both through LinkedIn and locally where you live is so important. And what that allows you to do is to find out about opportunities and understand where hot points in industry is, and then meet people who may be able to open doors for you. So there's not one way to get an internship, but if you utilize all the different ways to connect and to essentially get the internship, you're going to increase your chance of getting one. So that is applying to the job that you see on GradCracker, or LinkedIn or the company's website. So that's number 1. Number 2 is build your network and reach out to people. Is there opportunities? Look at SMEs. SMEs are crying out for engineers at the moment, but they don't have as formal a work placement. So if it's a local organisation, reach out to them, drop them an email, a phone call, a message on LinkedIn, maybe go physically go to the office, or reach out to an engineer who maybe works there and find out if you can do a day, a week, a month. Try each of the traditional and more modern techniques of trying to reach out and connect and try like your life depends on it. Treat it like in your third year, or in your second year, in your third year, in your fourth year. Treat getting an internship like another module. So when it hits September, start your outreach and apply, and look for where the events are and who you can connect with at a more human level, and there your opportunities can increase. I always say I can never get you a job or an internship or a work placement, but I can help you connect with the people to do that, and all I do is essentially the same as which I'm asking for you to do, which is connect with people. Next up is, if I was a student, what would I do today Or what would I be doing if I was a student? Probably quite similar to my last question. I would be getting involved, similar to what I did at university. First thing I would do would be I would get my membership of my professional institute. And that's what I did. 15 years ago, I joined IMechE as a student member. It's free. I went to events. I connected with my local panel. I wasn't part of it. Like, I know a lot of the talent network are, or the student ambassador network are now, and the students that follow engineer career are. But I went to events, I was a member, and I engaged. So that's what I would do. The first thing I would do is I would join my professional institute, and I'd become a member, and I would go to events, similar to my last question, and I would connect with industry, and do as much outreach as possible. And this ties us quite nicely onto the next question, which is, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? Contrary to belief, I get a lot of imposter syndrome, and it might not seem like that because I release videos and I do podcasts, but I get nervous before doing podcasts. I get nervous before going to events, and I'm not just saying that. I do. But the way I overcome it is I do a lot of reflection, and I always remind myself why I'm doing this. And those close to me do the same, and that's why I do it myself when I've kind of got the when I've got the ability to do it, because otherwise I lean on people around me and they'll tend to say, remember why you're doing this. And it's the same for you. Why are you doing this? So why are you building a career in engineering? What is the reason for it? And I use the technique with students, I share the technique with students, or the technique I share with students, which if you're a student, you'll know exactly what it is, and I'm going to try and hold back a wee bit of my engineer careers kind of knowledge, and if you want to know more about it, you want my message, or you can join the talent network if you're a student. But using techniques like the one that we use with an engineer career, and really homing in on why you're doing engineering. You know, is it to earn money? Is it to travel the world? Is it because your dad was an engineer? Was it because your sister or your mum was an engineer, or your aunt? That, remembering why you're doing this, is your energy. And that's what I do to remove my imposter syndrome. And that might sound quite washy, but it's what I do. I remind myself of it and take the breath and go in. And go to the first event. You don't have to outreach. You don't have to be speaking to everyone in the room. But be there. Listen. It might be a lecture. It might be a panel. Just be there and listen. Pick up the leaflets. Engage. And then go back again. And you'll build your confidence up. And through that, you become seen. And through that, you become more knowledgeable. And you become more aware of what's going on. And from my experience, that you begin to manage the imposter syndrome. I don't think you get rid of it. Maybe you get rid of it, but you manage it. I was at a dinner recently in Glasgow, and yeah, I had a quite strong imposter syndrome at that. But I go to events and I feel the same. But yeah, that's how I overcome it. And but I'd love to know how you overcome imposter syndrome, or if you're an experienced engineer or leader and you've got advice for the engineer career community, then share it. And then the final question we've got is what would I tell my younger self if I was to go back? I think stick to what you love and what you're good at. And that might sound quite kind of open. I think you could probably flip it. Find out what you're good at and what you love, and chase it. And I think I'm doing that now, which is quite interesting. And I don't think I could have identified this when I was back at university, but that's what I would tell myself. And I think it's summed up by be curious. And you hear that a lot. Be curious, ask the questions, investigate. Whether it's a part of engineering or whether it's a part of the engineering community, like I'm involved in now with engineering career. Be curious, find out what you love, find out what you're good at, and chase it down. And the reason this is a great question that someone asked, and I included it because I'm going to kind of use it as advice for if you're an engineering student, you've got to this part of the podcast and not turned off yet, is think about your career right at the start. But if you're listening to this and you're in 5th year or 4th year and you're coming to that inevitable bit where you're looking for a job, you can use this as well. But think about it. If you're at the start of your learning, your career, and your studies, think about your next few years as a funnel. And where you are at the moment, the funnel's wide open. The more that you bring into the funnel, which is the people you meet, the events you go to, the companies you meet, the companies you hear, the podcasts you listen to about engineering, what you read about engineering globally, the more that you're going to be able to narrow in that funnel and find out where you want to go to. So that when you get to third year and you're starting to think about that job, and the internships come into it as well, because like the internship you get doesn't mean you have to go and work there. But as you begin to narrow that funnel in, as you get into third year and then fourth year, and then, if you do your masters in England, I guess that's fourth year, but as you get close to the end of your studies, you should be narrowing in where you want to get to. And then at the end, you have more clarity of where you want to go. I think the earlier you do that, the more likely you are to get to where you want to get to earlier. And I think that's one thing I would tell my younger self. And I think I did it, if I'm honest. And that's where we are. So this is the end of the first solo podcast, and yeah, I'm really grateful for everyone's support of Engineer Career, in particular strategic partners, and this is awesome. I love Engineer Career. I love what I'm doing, and I'm going to continue doing it because I can see it's making a difference. And I can't wait for the next solo podcast. I can't wait for the next bank of 9 podcasts leading up to it, and I can't wait to share more of what we're doing over the coming months. But thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of the community. Like, subscribe, add your comments, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, follow on LinkedIn, follow on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, and most importantly, don't work too hard. But I'll catch you soon. Thanks.